Ready to go? Okay. Call the Planning, Zoning, Agricultural Committee meeting together for Wednesday, January 19th. We get a roll call, please.
Mr. Featherling?
Here.
Mr. Miller? Mr. Tholen? Mr. Payton? Ms. Peters?
Present.
Mr. Fairfield?
Present.
Mr. Stipes? Mr. Swanson?
Present.
Mr. Dunnell? Mr. Eckhoff?
Present.
Mr. Kirkstrop?
Present.
Ms. Bryan? Mr. Collins? Ms. Hudson?
Present.
Mr. Alexander Hildebrand? Mr. Goller?
Present.
Mr. Wheeler?
Present.
Mr. Searoy? We have a quorum.
Thank you. Okay, I wasn't notified of any public comment. We'll go past that. Okay, we get approval of minutes. We get a motion and a second to approve. Mr. Kirkstra, we get a second. Mr. Swanson, all in favor. First and a second, say aye. All in favor, say aye. Sorry. Aye. Motion carried, right? Okay. Okay. Next up is the building report. We haven't heard this one for a while. You got two, Del, basically?
Yeah, I believe the last building report was the October report. Today I have the November and December reports for 2021. I think they're on a separate tab on your iPad. Is that correct? Yes. November 2021, we had no new homes. Total permits were 76, and revenue generated was $77,104. On a side note, that's a pretty dramatic increase from the year before, where we only had $21,730 in revenue and a total of 69 permits. For December, we did have one new home, issued 51 permits, and generated revenue of $18,378.
Okay. We get a motion to combine and approve. Ms. Peters? Second, Mr. Eckhoff. Okay, any discussion about building report? Any questions? Okay, all right, none, say, want to combine? Okay, we'll just go ahead and do it separately. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Right, thank you. Okay, next up will be planning. We get a motion and a second for planning report from Dell. Okay, Ms. Hudson, second by Colton, or Mr. Swanson, or Mr. Peter. 9, okay.
This is the selection of the Kankakee County Natural Hazard Mitigation Plan update for a consultant. Back in September, we received a grant from IEMA and the federal government for $59,000 to update our hazard mitigation plan, which was last updated in 2013. This plan identifies and makes recommendations for the various hazards, natural hazards that Kankakee County is susceptible to. Having a plan in place that has been adopted opens up our eligibility for a lot of different grant opportunities through FEMA and IEMA. So having an adopted plan is a good thing to have. We received the grant back in December. We issued an RFQ for proposals to hire a consultant to develop this plan for us. American Environmental out of Springfield responded to that RFQ. Last Thursday at the Regional Planning Commission, the American Environmental did give a presentation to them, and the Regional Planning Commission recommends that we select them as our consultants. Andrea Boswick from American Environmental is with us today. If you have any questions, I think she did prepare a fairly brief PowerPoint if you would like to see it, but I don't want to waste anybody's time if you don't.
Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
Does anyone have any questions for Andrea? Okay, Ms. Peters.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to see the presentation. He said it was short.
Yeah.
I believe it's short, correct?
Okay.
I can make it as short as you want.
All right.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay, go ahead.
Share screen.
All right, are you all ready?
Sure.
All right.
Always ready. Okay.
Okay, so good morning. My name is Andrea Bostwick. I'm the Emergency Management Services Manager for American Environmental. We talked to the Planning Commission on Thursday, like Delbert said, about what a hazard mitigation plan is, why it needs to be updated, and how we can help update the county's 2013 plan. So a natural hazard mitigation plan details the natural and man-made hazards that have previously impacted the county and identifies activities and projects that each of the participating jurisdictions would like to see implemented to reduce the risk to people and property from these hazards before they occur. So the hazard mitigation plan is different from the county's emergency operations plan. Hazard mitigation plan identifies actions that can be taken before a natural disaster strikes, while the emergency operations plan describes how the jurisdiction will respond to disasters during and immediately after. So they are two different plans in how they go about things. This plan needs to include hazards such as severe summer storms. We're talking thunderstorms with damaging winds, hail, lightning, heavy rain, flooding, both flash flood and riverine flooding, severe winter storms, both snow, ice, and combination events, tornadoes, excessive heat, extreme cold, drought, and earthquakes. Those are the general natural hazards that are included in the plan. So why should the county update their plan? Well, the biggest benefit or reason to update the plan is access to those federal mitigation assistance funds. So in order to access certain types of non-emergency disaster assistance, jurisdictions must be a participant in a current FEMA-approved hazard mitigation plan. And these plans are good for a 5-year period. After that, then the jurisdictions aren't eligible anymore for those federal mitigation funds unless they have that updated plan. So the jurisdictions who participate in the plan update will become eligible for those federal funds to implement the mitigation actions that are identified in the plan. So FEMA encourages counties throughout the United States to prepare and update their hazard mitigation plans, because what they found is that for every dollar spent on mitigation, they can reap $6 in savings. So they'd rather spend it on the front end doing those projects to mitigate for the damages than on the back end where they have to pay for recovery and response. In terms of participants in the plan, of course the county is, but it's also a plan that covers multiple jurisdictions. So participants can include municipalities, townships, public authorities, school districts, special districts, generally any public entity. We've seen not only municipalities and townships participate, but we've also had schools, fire protection districts, hospitals, unincorporated recreational communities, water districts. Those are some of the entities we've seen participate and would invite to be part of the planning process. Participating jurisdictions are specifically identified in the plan, and they're the ones that will seek approval in order to become eligible to apply for those project funds. So what's included in the plan? There's a couple big items that we have to include, and they include a risk assessment and a vulnerability analysis. There has to be a mitigation strategy, and then public involvement or an outreach strategy, and then a capability assessment. So the risk assessment generally just goes through, identifies those hazards that are the big ones for the county. We look at past occurrences, severity, and then the likelihood of future occurrences. And then the vulnerability analysis takes that information from the risk assessment, and then we identify the impacts to public health and property, and then we estimate future potential dollar losses. The mitigation strategy, that's really the heart of the program. After we look at the risk assessment, we look at those projects and activities to reduce the damages from the natural hazards that are in that risk assessment. And what we need to do is we need to identify those projects that were in the plan previously. We need to go back and identify the status. Have they been completed? Are they in progress? No progress met. And there's no penalty if you haven't done anything with those projects. We just have to report on that. And then, of course, the big thing is that we create jurisdiction-specific mitigation action tables for each of the participating jurisdictions that include those projects and activities for each of those participants. So what kind of projects are eligible for funding? This is a hazard mitigation plan, so the projects and activities included must be hazard mitigation related. We're not talking emergency response, recovery, or maintenance projects. They have to be related to one of the hazards. So some of the examples of sustained mitigation actions that we see are acquiring and removing flood-prone properties or elevating structures out of the floodplain, constructing community safe rooms, that's FEMA's new word for a tornado shelter. We've also seen constructing of retention and detention basins for stormwater management, burying utility lines to critical facilities, installing hardening materials, things like shadow-resistant window films, hail-resistant shingles, things like that. Those are some of the projects that are eligible for funding through this program. Some of the projects that aren't eligible for funding include things like snow plows and dump trucks, radio and video equipment. Those are things that FEMA doesn't necessarily consider mitigation. There's a scale from emergency response to mitigation, but those are things that they're not willing to fund right now under the mitigation project. So as we said, how's the plan funded? Well, it was funded through a planning grant from FEMA, which you guys have already received. The grant is administered through the Illinois Emergency Management Agency and pays for 75% of the planning costs. The remaining 25% is provided through local match. In this case, it's going to be in-kind services. So how can we help you? So we've developed and updated hazard mitigation plans for over 30 counties and several standalone municipalities within Illinois. We're familiar with the natural hazards that impact the various regions of Illinois, and we'll make sure that the plan is tailored to your specific needs. We have 3 trained risk assessors on staff here in Illinois. We're based out of Springfield, but our staff has extensive experience, risk assessment experience across Illinois, especially Northern Illinois. For hazard mitigation plans, we developed vulnerability analysis and mitigation strategies that have been featured as examples in both the 2013 and the 2018 state hazard mitigation plan. All of the plans we've completed have been approved and received final approval through IEMA and FEMA, and they were completed on or ahead of schedule. None of the counties we've worked with have had to pay cash to meet their local match. We're able to meet all that local match through in-kind services. Participation at meetings, filling out forms that are needed for the program, just having discussions with us about mitigation projects. We've all worked in state government, so we have a very good idea of what they want in terms of documentation for that in-kind service. We also work very closely with all of the participating jurisdictions to make that process as simple as possible. We run the gamut between very small communities all the way up to very large ones, and we kind of understand what their needs are, and we're here to help them through the process. We don't want to make this harder on them than it has to be. We also have a strong working relationship with the mitigation section at IEMA. We've worked extensively with the state hazard mitigation officer and his staff, and we're able to get quick responses to questions. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. Is there any questions for me?
Okay. Anybody have any questions? Ms. Peters? I just figured you had one, that's all.
I was taking notes, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, you mentioned risk and vulnerability projects and funding, community safe rooms. So we have many manufactured homes that don't have basements, and recently there's been a lot of damage from straight line winds. Normally it would be tornadoes, but it seems like the risk is getting higher just due to changes in the weather patterns. So can you talk a little bit about like community safe rooms? Like an example, that's all I'm looking for. Like I said, we have manufactured housing that, you know, it's pretty dense, and there's, you know, our church basement, for example, says, you know, come, you know, we're opening, there's a tornado warning, you can come up, but some people have to travel a few miles to get there, which could be more dangerous. So I'm interested in that.
Yeah, no, that is a project that's very interesting for a lot of people. And when we say tornado shelter, what they're built to, the community safe rooms, are built to high wind standards. So that covers not only tornadoes, but straight line winds. When you're talking about the community safe rooms, there are specific criteria. There's an entire guidance book that FEMA puts out on this for community, which are for multiple residents, and then there's ones for private businesses and residential homes. But the community safe rooms, there's specific criteria, and one of them, like you talked about, is how far people have to travel to use it. So you're not, in certain areas, you're talking about having, excuse me, multiple community safe rooms because of that distance for travel. Like I said, they're built to high wind standards. They generally have generators associated with them, AC, heating and cooling units. Essentially, they're just a place for people to temporarily be for that period of time when that warning is going on. We've seen them in communities that do not have a lot of basements, so manufactured homes. They've been put in as projects for mobile home parks, At campground facilities, that's another one where we see that as a project put in because those people don't have any place to go. So that's kind of what we've seen in terms of community safe rooms, if that helps answer your question.
Very much. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Anyone else? Mr. Science.
Good morning. Could you just give me a brief narrative on what you do in the area of aquatics and drinking water and wastewater treatments, and how, because Kankakee is blessed to have a river, what would you be looking at, you know, to enhance or at least sustain the quality of life for the residents here in the Kankakee County?
Okay. So first thing we would do is definitely talk to the public works section in the city, and then identify, are there any concerns or needs that we can address through mitigation in terms of the wastewater treatment plant for hardening. Unfortunately, I'm not exactly aware of where it's at in Kankakee as to whether it would need to, we could put in a project for flood proofing of either the drinking water or the wastewater treatment facilities. We've seen that as part of hazard mitigation plans before. Some areas have perchance to build their wastewater treatment plants right next to rivers, and sometimes that doesn't go real well. We've also seen communities put in for essentially levees, berms around those facilities to keep them from flooding, because you have a lot of advanced technical electrical systems that you just don't want to get wet. So that's another way that we do that in terms of wastewater and drinking water. Now, one of the things is if you have a facility and you're unfortunately blessed with an older one, and there's maintenance issues that are associated with that, that is not something that the mitigation plan will fund. All right. So it has to be hazard related. It hasn't been one of the things that we've seen individuals put in is for lightning surge protection equipment. If your lift stations, your facility itself get hit by lightning, that's a natural hazard that impacts those facilities and can knock out expensive equipment. Other projects that we've seen for drinking water and wastewater are backup generators, so that we're making sure that they run and we're protecting that community lifeline of water, all right? So that we have clean water and we have a sewer system that works as it's supposed to during an event. We don't need backups and things like that. So does that kind of address your question?
Yes, that does. And then I was just thinking anything that prevents sand from coming in our water, things of that nature.
Yes. Yes.
You do have. All right.
Those are all projects that are definitely something that can be put in for the this city of Kankakee. Now, there are other municipalities where that might not be their thing. So these lists need to be specifically tailored because you all have different needs and wants in terms of mitigation.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Wheeler.
Thank you.
First time.
Excuse me, this is somewhat timely because we have a work plan on the river all the way from here through Indiana, the Kankakee River, and one of the big things we're focused on is building retention for places for the river to be a river instead of building wastewater facilities on the river. Have retention, spillways, things like that throughout. So I guess with laterals and drainage districts and the coordination with all of them, and silt and sand mitigation in the river now versus the engineer construction to keep it out of the river, and really the zoning and land use recommendations that we use within our code in a planning department to make sure that people aren't building right along a river and expecting it not to flood. So it's amazing how that happens. But I'm just wondering, how do you integrate and use those resources in what you do for the hazard mitigation? Because again, I think we've touched on it, and I've heard it straight from FEMA and DC. They don't want to pay for emergency response, but they'd rather pay for mitigation now. And I think we're sitting in a good spot on combining all of these factors to go after larger sums of money to build on success. Would you agree with that, or?
I would. One of the things, and especially when you're talking about building areas for the river to be river, Those are natural system protection projects is their new word for those. And that's something that they're very interested in, is returning it back so that you have places for that water to go that aren't taking out houses, and you're zoning for it correctly. Those are big things for FEMA right now. And one of the things that we will do is when we will form a committee for this plan that includes all of the participating municipalities that want to participate, townships. We'll also invite that group that we were talking about, I think we touched on it Thursday, that for that river project, they will be invited to be a participant in this plan. We will look at those plans and we can incorporate those in. We have to look at what's been done in terms of planning for the county, and we have to report on that in the plan. And that's one of those things that can be incorporated into the plan. And then what planning mechanisms are available to incorporate that into the county's plan and everything. So that's something that FEMA is very interested in.
Okay.
How about it? Oh, I'm sorry. I have one, Andrea. Ms. Peters had another one first. Go ahead.
You go first.
Okay, first time for me. Would that include purchasing property, or only doing work to property? I mean, are they involved in purchasing in spillway areas, floodlands, wetlands areas, marsh areas to hold back water? Or are they into just building dams and berms and bridges and things like that?
No, and like you said, when you're talking about the river being river, sometimes that's just buying out land so that when it floods, the water has some place to go and there's nobody there.
Okay.
That is definitely a project.
Okay. And when you come out here to visit our place, if any place you want to go see anything or anything, let us know. We'll get you on the water or whatever you want to see if you need to see something.
That's great. It always helps to know what you're looking at. Google Earth is only good for so many things, but to get a bird's eye view of that is great. You guys are also my biggest resource for all of this. You have an infinite amount of knowledge that we try to tap into when we do this, because I could write a plan for you, but you guys are the ones that are going to make it useful for your communities.
Okay.
So
make it fit us.
Yes.
Ms. Peters.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question, you talk about the river, but we have a creek that runs from the northeast to the southwest corner of
Two creeks.
Two creeks. And they have flooded in the last 10 years, much more than they ever have in the past. And is that something that could be in the plan too? Do you work with the Army Corps of Engineers to figure out why they're flooding more than they were? We're having like a 100-year flood every year. So, and I grew up here, so Route 45 never used to flood, and now it floods all the time.
Sometimes twice a year.
Yeah, true. Sometimes twice. So.
Yeah.
So one of the things for this is we're planning. We are not actually going out and conducting the projects. All we're doing right now is we're trying to gather what needs to be done. And one of those projects can be, this is what's happening. We're seeing flooding. We need to coordinate with Army Corps, IDOT, if they're state or U.S. routes. Unfortunately, as you all know, you can't do anything with them. That's something that IDOT has to do. So it's coordinating with them to see what kind of drainage or hydraulic studies need to be done, and then what those improvements might be to reduce that flooding along those roadways or those creeks. It may just be that this is the new normal, and we have to figure out how do you take care of that flooding for those who live along those creeks. And it is not just rivers, it's creeks too, it's streams. When we're talking about projects, it isn't just associated with river. It's all of those water bodies that can potentially cause you to have issues. When you get humans against water, sometimes that doesn't go so well.
Water always wins.
Yeah, you're not going to beat water.
Yeah, this plan will identify the projects, not necessarily, well, actually, not build the projects. That's like phase 2, phase 3. You apply. This gets you in the ballpark to apply for those funds to actually do the projects.
Okay. Mr. Wheeler.
All I was going to say is it may seem like there's more water because there is. We're at historic highs in, I guess, 115 years of recorded rainfall amounts. From South Bend all the way through here, it's raining more now. I mean, it's like this. Yeah. The chart it's pronounced. So,
and that's kind of why participation in this plan is very important on the front end, so that you can get those projects in the plan to make them eligible later. So,
Okay.
Oh, by the way, can I ask a question?
Mr. Ritter.
Can the identified projects that we already have for the river, is that easily just inserted into this plan? Or is it an addendum? Or how does that work? Because right now I've actually had this firm, it's Burke Engineering, I don't mind saying that because we selected them a long time ago to do this. They're putting numbers behind it, what it would cost. So to do this bank stabilization and potential filtration projects and things like that, do you just kind of, here's the other plan for that and tack it on the back, or do we have to build it in yours?
What the best way to do it and the way that FEMA likes it is that we build it back in.
Okay.
So if those were projects that were in that original plan, like I said, we'll talk about the status of them, and then we can look at them and say, are they still practical for now, or do we need to roll them into the new plan? We can give them new descriptions, we can enhance them, write on them. Because what we're doing with this is we're just writing those projects, and we don't actually have to have dollar amounts in the plan for this. Now, if we know how much it's going to cost, that's great, and we can include those numbers, but it's not necessary. This is a wish list of what you'd all like to see accomplished if funding became available. If you don't put it in the plan, you don't have the option to ask for funding for it. Okay, so that's just something to think about when we're talking about this. We'd be very interested in having them attend the meetings as well, because they're the experts on this. They're going to tell us exactly what you guys need as a project. Or what's already been done that we can say, hey, this has been already done in the last 5 to 10 years. This is where we need to go next, so that they can see that there's been some implementation of that. That's something they also like to see in these plans.
Okay. Mr. Kirkster, you're looking at me like you're going to say something. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say I was at the original presentation of with the Planning Commission and heard what was said, and I think the way we need to work, the way we need to look at this is this service is going to provide us with a tool that we may not have within our own ranks to get planning for the future, for the present and for the future, to mitigate the various problems we have, not just our flooding problems or issues, but also the safety and the mitigation of the hazards that we have within all of our communities, as well as not just in certain municipalities. But I myself went over the program after the presentation, and I see where this is a very strong benefit. I don't think that I'm not going to say that this is something we're going to see right away, but down the road, probably when some of us aren't here, there are going to be positive projects that are on their way and working to better our community. I think this is a great program and a good idea to have these people on board with us.
Okay. I also do too. Anyone else have any comments? Ray? Nothing? Okay. Andy? None? Okay. So we have a person that's second. Well, Andrea, I had a couple quick questions for you. How long is it going to take you to process this? I think I read it in here, but I don't remember what it was. Real quick, so that everybody can hear it. So.
And I'm sorry, I didn't go through that. So the schedule for this is probably 12 to 18 months, just generally because we do a 5-meeting process. We want to go back. We want to make sure that everybody has the chance to participate if they want to. We have to lead them through, and there's some information that we need to try to put this whole document together. The meetings themselves, that after we organize the committee, we can do them fairly quickly. 9 to 12 months is generally what it takes to do all of those meetings. The back end is where we finish off the plan, and then we submit it to IEMA and FEMA for their approval. That time frame can go anywhere from 2 months to 6 to 9 months, and that's not because they have major issues with the plan. It's just when it falls within their cycle of activities, and if there's a natural disaster, it pulls them away from doing things. Average we've seen for a review is 3 to 6 months.
Okay.
So during that time frame, we just kind of sit back. They give us any comments. They're generally very minor. We make those changes, and then we come back. Now, one of the things about the plan is to be eligible for these funds, you not only have to participate, but at the end, you're going to have to adopt the plan by resolution, each of the participating jurisdictions. And it's easy to do. We have a model resolution we give everybody, but they need to do that. We provide, we ask for copies of those adoption resolutions back. We submit those back to FEMA, and then they give us a final approval letter. And that's when the clock starts for that 5-year plan maintenance period. And then at the 5-year mark, the plan has to be updated again in order to remain eligible for those mitigation funds.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Okay, we have a first and a second. Get a roll call vote. Kelly, please respond in morning so we get to vote on a roll call. I
Mr.
believe.
Featherling?
Yes.
Mr. Payton? Yes. Ms. Peters?
Aye.
Mr. Fairfield? Mr. Snipes?
Aye.
Mr. Swanson?
Aye.
Mr. Eckhoff? Mr. Kirkstra?
Aye.
Ms. Hudson?
Aye.
Mr. Gowler?
Aye.
Mr. Wheeler? Motion carries.
Thank you. Okay, thank you very much for your presentation. If you need anything, let us know.
And if you all have any other additional questions, please let me know.
Okay, thank you. Have a
Thank
good
you.
day. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
We don't need anything for transportation, just listen to it, right?
We got planning looking forward.
Oh, looking forward.
Yes.
What's that? Oh, boy. Okay, next up, we have planning looking forward, that's Dell.
All right, that's the start of a new year, so I thought I would give a presentation on what we can look forward to in 2022 from a planning standpoint. Got this. First, I'd like to start out showing you the organization of our office. The planning department has two different divisions. There's a third one that we'll talk about in a little bit, but the planning division, the building division, and the former solid waste division. And we also have the Kankakee Area Transportation Study, which sometimes is referred to as our Transportation Division. And we also have the GIS Department. I've listed all the employees and staff that are under each one of those categories. Next. So what do we have coming up for 2022? Under planning, we have the Hazard Mitigation Plan, which we just previously discussed at length. Historic Preservation Plan. The commission will be applying for a CLG grant to develop a Janier Township survey of historic sites and structures. The River Grant, we've received about $8 million grant to remove silt and sedimentation from the river, and some other projects that's still being worked out, the details on that. Under solid waste, we'll be looking into possibility of reinstating or actually doing some of the solid waste division activities that we formerly were not doing, such as recycling programs with the e-waste and that type of thing. Next. And that brings us to e-waste recycling. We started the e-waste program last year, and we're looking at continuing that. We don't have all of our numbers put together from last year yet, but it does appear, at least on the surface, that it was a very successful year for that program. Countywide broadband. The Accelerate Illinois program will be looking for the need and deployment of broadband communications countywide. We've applied for a grant to look into that. We have not received notification that we are part of that yet, but that's one of the things we'll be looking at. The natural gas pipeline, we'll continue working on that project for Pembroke Township. Heritage Prairie Solar Farm. Probably within the next few weeks to a month, we should be expecting a special use application for that project out in Essex Township. It's a fairly large, I think about 2,000 acre solar farm project. To be followed by the Heritage Prairie Wind Farm, which covers 2 or 3 townships out in that area. And I can show you that in a minute here on the next slide, but that's I forget how large that is, but a couple of 100 megawatts of wind power. And we should be looking at other possible renewables that will be coming our way this year. Grant Park Wind Farm is still being discussed, but they haven't came to us in a while on anything on that project. Duke Energy is looking for a solar farm project west of the city of Kankakee. Boralex Renewables are looking for a project somewhere in Kankakee County. Next slide. I put together a map of the west end of the county to show you all the various renewable project sites that are out there. The green up in the upper left corner is the Heritage Prairie Solar. The kind of peach color in the middle is the Heritage Prairie Wind Farm. Yellow and blue down at the bottom are our existing solar farms. The Duke Energy area is the blue off to the right there, that blue circle there. We don't have any specific land that they've identified to us. That's just their search area for establishing a utility grade solar farm in that area. And it's a little hard to see on the map, but all the other smaller ones that were approved in 2018 are also on there. It's my understanding the state's going to open up another pot of dollars or incentives, and some of those projects may very well go forward. We did have 7 community solar gardens that were approved. 5 of them are up and running and producing electricity. 2 are under construction, and we still have the Staley utility grade solar project out in Rockville Township that is in the application process that has been put on hold right now because apparently the project is being sold. We don't really have any other details on that. Next, please. Under zoning, the Agritourism Ordinance, as you are all aware, was...
Excuse me for a second.
With the circles, the extra jurisdictional.
Yeah, the ETJ, which is very important when it comes to the wind farm, because the county does not have siting authority within those circles. So you can see that part of the Heritage Prairie Wind Farm, the county board will not be approving. Those municipalities will have to approve anything within those circles. And I can make this map available. I didn't put it in your packet because I wanted to show it here first. So, but we can certainly make it available to you.
Excuse me, Del, real quick.
Yes.
Wouldn't we still be acting on it as a county board?
No.
Once we get their approval? Or you just need their, I thought you just needed their head nod to say it was okay and they have to pass a resolution or whatever to approve it, and then you take it from there?
No. The state statute gives them full authority for siting, permitting, pretty much everything to do with any wind farm activities within that circle.
But if you're building a housing project or a development, then that would be.
If you want to go ahead and go back to that slide for that. As you can see, these are small communities with limited resources. So it's my understanding, and that's a question for the attorneys, but I believe they could defer their authority to us if they could not, if they did not have the capabilities of reviewing and processing it. But that would be a discussion to have. But without that discussion, the county has no authority within those circles for wind farms.
Okay.
Okay. Under zoning, as you're aware, the Agritourism Ordinance was repealed last month due to the Agricultural Experience Act. We are still working on a, what's it called, a rider bill? Trailer bill, to make some changes to that to make it a little more palatable. I've heard no word on that as of right now, but that's something we'll be working on this year. We're looking at the possibility of adding accessory dwelling units to our ordinance. We have not begun that process yet, so I can't really say where that's going to go, but an accessory dwelling unit, think granny suite. It would basically be an accessory dwelling unit for a family member that needs care. We're getting a lot of phone calls from residents that would like to do these kind of things, and I do know that Will County does allow them, so we are looking into the possibility of adding that to our ordinance. And there's a lot of other zoning code changes that probably need clarification or updating that we'd like to occur this year as well. Next, building division. Currently, right now, we're being reviewed by the ISO, which is the Insurance Service Office, to look at our building code effectiveness grading scale, which is which will produce a number that tells us how we're doing as far as our codes and our enforcement of our regulations. That number can affect, it goes into a huge matrix because fire departments and distance from fire departments all play into it, but that number can affect the cost of homeowners insurance in our county. So we want the best number possible for that, and that is done every 5 years, and we are currently in the process of working on that. Coinciding with that, one of the things that makes that number the best possible is having the latest codes adopted. So we will be looking, our current code for building is 2015, and we'll be looking at adopting the 2020 codes this year, which is the latest codes. Little
Mr.
over.
Wheeler has a
Oh,
question.
sorry.
Del, what other things impact that number? Like, do training or certifications of our inspectors have an impact on that
Oh,
number?
yes. Yeah, that's a 22-page application we're doing just on our department, and they want to know how many inspectors we have, what their certifications are. All of that plays into it. The number of inspectors you have versus the number of housing units in your community. I can tell you, we will never be able to afford enough inspectors for their recommendations, and that's usually what hurts us the most on our scoring, because they have so many per 10,000 houses or such, and we are always well under that number. But from our standpoint, those things play into it. Do we use outside services like engineers and for reviews and that type of thing? You know, so yes, certifications, education, that all plays into it.
Interesting.
No, it's a 10-point scale, 10 being the worst, 1 being the best. It's my understanding that nobody has ever gotten higher than a 3. You'd have to be pretty much perfect to get higher than that, and so 3 is really good, and I think we're at a 4 currently. So we'd like to keep that 4. Get a 3 if we could. I think we'd have to hire more people to get the 3. That's probably the one thing we would be dinged on, and I would not recommend that. Okay.
Yeah.
I see where you're going with this.
Okay, Del.
There's also other outside forces that play into it, into the overall insurance rates, like your fire. If you have a volunteer fire department versus a paid full-time fire department, that gets you different points. Do you have fire hydrants and a water system in your community? Distance to the fire department, ambulances, hospitals. It all plays into the whole huge matrix.
Safe house.
I don't even believe to understand how that works. Hazard mitigation plan, having one of those does play into that matrix as well.
Safe spaces.
SmartGov Phase 2. If you remember, about a year and a half ago, some of you newer members may not, we were given the opportunity to purchase automation software for our issuing building permits and our contractor registration. We have been using it for a year now. It's going well. All of the staff uses it. In fact, we have not issued a paper building permit in probably 9 months. So it's all been done through this automation software. The public is starting to use it. Part of that is I'm not sure that they're all aware of it. So Phase 2 is going to be making enhancements to that system and definitely getting the word out there to people so they know that it's there and that they can use it. So that'll be Phase 2 of the SmartGov. Last year we did an abandoned structure survey. Not sure where that's going, but there was over 200 abandoned or dilapidated structures that we found countywide in the unincorporated area, and we're going to be looking at ways that we can use our codes and our enforcement process to start rectifying that situation. IDNR, we were given a grant to buy out 3 homes on Laurel Lane. One of them was purchased and torn down. We're waiting for reimbursement on that one so that we can purchase and demolish the other 2 homes. We have till December 31st of this year to complete that project.
Okay, Mr. Wheeler has another question.
I had that under old business. Is there any way we can revisit that at the next PZA meeting? Because that was a recommendation that came out of the committee. People were afraid we weren't going to get our money from the state. So they said, well, let's do 2 houses, tear those down, get repaid, and then we'll feel comfortable to move forward. I would ask that maybe we put that on the agenda to revisit that, because you don't get stiffed on that kind of money because it's FEMA through the state.
Right.
But we're gonna run into a problem with some of these other river access projects that we're gonna be starting to work on.
Yes.
We need to make sure that land is clear. So I just want to throw that out there. If that's acceptable, maybe we can do that next month.
Yeah, I mean, we are ready to move forward. We're just we were given the order not to start the next one till we're reimbursed from the previous one, and until we get that reimbursement, we can't do anything, so.
I think having the COVID infrastructure money is a good enough safety net to know that if we do have to wait a little longer, we have it. Because when we first made that decision, we didn't have it. We had less than having it at that time. We had literally no money.
I heard that the state's in the best financial situation it's ever been in, so.
Survey says.
For transportation, obviously they'll still be doing all of the things they do every year to update plans and keep the process moving. But this year we'll also be starting the Greenways and Trails plan again. We had started that project last year, then we lost the staff member that was working on it. We finally have that staff member replaced, so we'll be moving forward with the Greenways and Trails plan. Anything else you'd like to add, Ben, for transportation? Okay, next. GIS department. We're going to continue updating the system. We are consolidating some servers. We are trying to eliminate the cloud-based servers that we have. Currently, we have 3 cloud-based servers. As we migrate that data to our own servers that are in-house here, we will be eliminating those servers, which will help us reduce costs and give us better control over where our data is actually sitting. As far as large projects, we got the aerial photography done in 2020. Because of COVID, we didn't do a project last year. But we are going to be looking at either doing planimetrics or new LiDAR this year. Our planimetrics were last updated in 2010, and what planimetrics are is basically a drawn line version of what you would see on an aerial photo. So building outlines, fence lines, pavement and sidewalk, edge of pavement and sidewalks, outbuildings, that type of thing. And LiDAR is laser detection and retrieval. Basically, they use lasers to do an elevation model of the entire county. And typically use LiDAR or aerial photos to make the planimetrics, so I'm not sure which one we're going to do first yet. That's still under discussion. Our LiDAR was last done in 2015. So they're both starting to get a little outdated, and either one or the other needs to be done for our next project. We know the new census was done. Not everything is out yet for it, but as it comes out, the GIS department will be putting it out for use, probably building a few applications that the public can use to better navigate that data as it becomes available. And next, and last. And generally for the office, I've been charged with coming up with a customer service improvement program for our office, which is just about complete. And once that is finalized, then we'll be starting to implement that, and that is going to be one of our big focuses this year, is improving our customer service. And part of that, as I've gone through it, is image and branding. We definitely need to improve our image and let the community know who we are, where we are, and what we do. So that's going to be part of that as well. I'm working with administration to update our websites. Our planning website is definitely in dire need of some revisions, and it's going to be part of the overall, is that just administration websites, Andy, or?
Yes, we're redoing the whole main website, and then the elected offices punch out into their own websites.
So the planning part of that will be completely updated. And then as far as fees go, this is something that's been on our radar for a while. We're going to be looking at our fee structures for rural-based service providers, stormwater permits, and floodplain permits. Currently, we charge no fee for any of those 3. We're not exactly sure why. And it could be that we don't. I don't know, but we're going to look into it, see what other people do.
I have a quick question, Bill. Can you put those fees in place, and then you have a project you do for the river, and then does the state pay the fees to the county then to help reimburse with some of the engineering?
That is not for those type of
Okay,
projects.
so it wouldn't be something
Government
that's a,
projects, no.
okay, just,
These would be building a home in a floodplain. You get a building permit. And I think the reason we don't charge for floodplain permits, nearest I can determine, is that it was always assumed that you would get the building permit fee, which would pay for our time and costs for inspections and such. And that does work when it's a home. But lately, we've been getting a lot of permits that don't necessarily have a building permit component to it, such as bank stabilization. There's no building permit because you're not really building anything, but we still have to do the paperwork. We have to go out and inspect, so we don't get any reimbursement for those costs.
but would the state be responsible for those costs if you had it in a fee for a permit? Would they have to buy the permit, or would we have to buy the permit?
Whoever's doing the work.
So whoever the subcontractor is, or whoever's doing the particular work?
Typically, the state is
Okay.
exempt from our permits to begin with. So
Well, you don't have to pay permit fees in your own county then?
as far as stormwater permits go, I think the intent was to charge a fee for those. Our ordinance says, talks about a fee. On Muni Code, you go there, it says for stormwater permit fees, go to section 18.1, but when you go to section 18.1, there's no fee listed.
Yeah.
Somebody back in 2006 didn't follow through, I don't think, on that one. And again, when you're building a new home, you're getting your fees out of the building permit, but if you're building just a pond or reworking your lot, building a berm, there's no building permit for that. So it would just be a stormwater permit. And like I said, we're not recapturing any of our cost for those type of permits. And rural-based service providers, again, I don't know why they did not charge a fee. We charge a fee for all other zoning actions, but that one did not have one associated with it. So we're looking to the possibility of doing that, what those fees might be or should be, and it's quite possible we'll determine that there should not be a fee. All right.
Anybody have any questions for Del? Okay. Go ahead.
Going back
Ray,
to that,
okay.
I guess that second slide, there was some, right, let me see, right. Right there what said River Grant, is that where should be transitional mean from versus form?
From the Kankakee River, yeah, that's a.
Oh, okay, it's a little tight, all right. I just read it and just kept it in my mind, go ahead.
Typo. Okay.
Form and from and spell check are both come out okay.
Mr. Fairfield.
I was curious, when the state legislature is talking about doing some changes for the Pembroke pipeline, natural gas pipeline, do you have any information on that, what they're wanting to change and why?
I do not, but I believe Ben does, so we'll turn it over to Ben.
Ooh, I don't have an acronym for this one though. So, there's a subsequent bill that's been introduced in the House by a Chicago-based representative, and when we were on our last call with NICOR and the team, a lot of what the bill says makes sense to us, right? I mean, in running a natural gas main, and I feel like this is where. But just a little bit up on the soapbox, people start saying pipeline and they think like Keystone, and we're talking about the natural gas line that runs to every person in this room's
Every
house.
subdivision, yeah.
And we're just trying to offer natural gas to residents just like we all have in our own homes. But there seems to be a lot of like objection to this because it's a pipeline, and so there's a little traction. The way the bill's written on it's just to make sure that if you're a landowner and you don't want, kind of the way it reads is if you don't want the pipeline, the line running through your property, that you would not be able to be forced into that. And so in talking with the NICOR team, we want people who want to be involved in this to be involved in this. And but from a public utility standpoint, there's sometimes it's easier to go across, sometimes you have to go around. This will be designed to where our partners know where the line's going. We're on land, that we have appropriate access to, and we'll provide it to homeowners that want the natural gas. If people don't want to become participants to this, they don't have to. But that seems to kind of be how this bill is introduced. It was introduced on the 29th of December. I think it got dumped into rules like on 5th of January. It has no co-sponsors. It's just a single sponsor. But it's something we'll continue to monitor. I can just tell you kind of from the team's perspective, it seemed to not, like, the reaction I got from the NICOR team was that it was not some sort of deal breaker or anything along those lines. So the project's moving forward. We're doing what we need to do on our end. There can be subsequent bills introduced. The big hurdle was getting that House bill passed, that Representative Haas introduced, and that was the big step for us. So.
Thanks, Mr. Wheeler.
Thank you.
Thank you. I've spoken to our lobbyist on this twice. There's various guesses why this representative is so interested in this out there. Again, they're playing it up like it's an 8-foot diameter pipe going across the top of people's lands instead of a 8-inch pipe going under the ground. There's a lot of misinformation out there. I'm heard from almost everybody. I've heard of no person say that they think the bill will see the light of day. Stranger things have happened just because that they've already taken action on this in the very last legislative session.
All right.
And so why go back and undo everything that the governor and both houses of the legislature have approved last year? There's also part of this that says all the land out there is going to be given to Nature Conservancy or Fish and Wildlife or somebody. So it's concerning because they're not stopping, and they're starting misinformation campaigns and massive protests, which equal 3 people from the area going up to Chicago with 300 from Chicago, saying they don't want to deliver really an economic fuel solution to an area that desperately needs it. So I would say it's a good question. Why she keeps doing this, Representative Harper, we can't really figure out. It doesn't make much sense, especially when it's against the wishes of the people that actually live there.
Right.
That's what's so amazing about this, is that the people there want it, and the people that have natural gas in their homes, wherever they live, don't want these folks in rural Hopkins Park and Pembroke Township to have natural gas. It makes no sense.
Propane lobby.
Well, I can't guess.
Yeah.
Like I can't make that assertion, and I won't. So.
But
They deserve better than that, to have a rep that's not even from their own area monkeying around in their own business.
Yeah. Mr. Payton.
based on what the chairman just said, I wondered the same thing. This lady lives in Chicago in a community where everyone have natural gas.
From a pipeline.
And I just can't understand it. It's got to be a motivation past something that we don't see.
We should have called it a gas main. Is that somewhere it changes over from
Distribution
pipeline to main?
line, not a pipeline.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, anyone else? Okay. Oh, okay. I don't know the codes around here sometimes. Sometimes it's this, sometimes it's this. Look at the codes.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, Del.
Rural transit update, I'll turn that over to Ben for that.
Okay. Okay, we don't need anything on this, do we? Andy, we don't need, sorry, Kelly, we don't need anything on this.
Just informational.
Just informational. Okay. Okay, Mr. Wilson, Ben, let's have our update.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this is going to be kind of an anecdotal update. I just want to. There was something that came out of we have a bi-monthly transit call with IDOT. The staff here, staff from Showbus, staff from throughout the state, IDOT sit on this call. And one of the things that came out of it, and I've spoken with Ms. Dick about it, and I wanted to kind of share with this committee, we haven't had vehicle procurement in the state in a couple of years now. And on the most recent call, IDOT's telling us because of the fluidity in the market on access to the individual vehicles and what the costs might be, that we're not going to have a consolidated vehicle procurement for years. So I just kind of want to, like, as every system needs vehicles regularly. We typically get, every couple of years you get a couple of vehicles, you roll the oldest ones off, you roll the newest ones in, and you just kind of like this kind of shifting, rolling vehicle stock. That's not going to happen. So we're being tasked by IDOT to kind of just keep an extra eye on our vehicles. We've got some very qualified staff that they know what the buses are doing. They know if they make a funny noise, what needs to be looked at. And they've kind of, I don't know if they've necessarily authorized this yet, but the dialogue sounds like they're likely going to be able to, we're going to be able to do some work where typically you might have said, hey, that's a broken whatever, it just put that one on the replacement list because it costs a certain portion of the total value of the vehicle. That might be something we end up fixing under the grant because of this access. And there are vehicles in fleets. I was just in a visit at the airport. There's planes that fly for 50, 60, 70 years. It's just you maintain them. And so it's not that the vehicles cannot be fixed or cannot be kept at a safe standard. And so the takeaway from this is we'll make sure our vehicles are safe. We'll work with our partners to make sure that the people riding our system, if you're riding on a bus, if you're being offered Kankakee Rural Transit, you're getting the product you need. So we'll make sure of that. But it's just interesting that the state really hasn't given us a good answer on when we're going to get new vehicles. And there's this kind of nebulous, like, COVID, things cost money, we don't know. And I feel like we're all living in that world, but we still have to buy things and still have to offer this service. So that's just kind of an odd anecdotal thing, but I wanted you to hear that. The system itself, we're trending up, but I will say that a lot of what happens in rural transit, so the majority of our rides are still on that commuter route between the city of Kankakee and the city of Momence. We're getting people back and forth to work. Then we have kind of a sporadic demand response system where if you call, we give you a ride. If you don't call, we don't need to. And then we kind of, the third leg of our stool is rural-based providers, social service agencies. We offer contracts and work on contracts with Age Guide, KCTC, certain agencies. And depending on where the COVID numbers are within the county, they're making decisions on their ridership. They're making decisions as to whether or not they want to maybe move outside of their facilities, whether or not they want to interact with persons outside of their facilities. So, when we're at, I don't know what the current positivity rate is, but let's say 18% or whatever was the last rolling positivity rate for Kankakee County. When the numbers start to get up that high, and we're only testing sub 2,000 tests a day, and we're seeing 200 cases or whatever the specific math was, they're starting to make decisions about maybe we won't be doing as many rides. So that has an effect on our system. So we're pleased in that we're trending upward. Even in still kind of, this is the COVID part, year 3, I guess. I don't know how we want to look at that, but so things are good. We're still well below what ridership was previous to that, and then we're still we're experiencing higher costs. If we need to give rides, we're making other buses available. If people need rides within our county, we're making sure. But then if you only have 3 or 4 people because of the way the family units are set up for them to get their appropriate space within the vehicle, then we might have to send a second bus to it. So that's a second bus, second driver, second bit of cost, where previously you could put 12 people on a bus, and that was something we could do with frequency. So we're still kind of in this fallout, this endemic fallout, but it's trending up and it's looking good. It's just that vehicle procurement thing's kind of odd, and so we'll stay monitoring it, and again, we'll make sure our vehicles are safe for the riders. But it's something that's concerning that we could be 5 or 6 years in between a procurement, and I know that maybe not this committee, but the county as a whole has looked at this when we replace any of our rolling stock. If you wait too long in the sheriff's department, you get the kind of this backlog of vehicles that are now too old, and so we just don't want to get there. Because medium duty, super medium duty vehicles aren't rolled off maybe like some of the other vehicles that are produced. So it's something we'll be mindful of it, and we'll report back as info becomes available. Yeah. So.
Okay. Mr. Wheeler.
Thank you, Bennett. Bennett, seems like that I want to call it door to door. They call for the demand response. That's the word. That's the true unknown variable, isn't it? We don't really know where, or do we know where people are coming from and where they're going? Because you could measure year to year what the system is doing.
Yeah, we have logs of, we have rider logs, right? So we have individual rider logs, and we can tell you kind of, you know, from what address to what address, and that becomes like a lot of healthcare based, right? I mean, you live out in a rural area, we show up at this address, and, you know, especially if you have regular things like dialysis or regular medical treatments, we track those. But I think fundamentally in rural transit, it becomes who's rural transit for? And you ask the average resident, and they say, oh, that's for people that maybe need to go to the doctor, or that's for the elderly. And the answer is rural transit is for anybody who wants to use it. So it's about, you know, making a resident aware that they can get that, you know, that ride for whomever in their family. I will say, though, the kind of default answer typically is when you say you have a rural transit system, and I tell somebody in this room, they say, oh, well, that'd be great if my mom needs a, you know, doctor's appointment, I'll make sure she gets on the bus or whatever. It could be anybody. And so trying to market that so it's not just individual rides for certain activities. It can be for whatever that rider needs. And having those buses, I will say, rural transit is, we work in kind of deadhead term, right? The idea that it's an empty bus going out, picking up one person, dropping them off, and then I've got a driver either waiting around for an hour trying to, because if they can't make it to another ride, they're just, you know, wait. That kind of downtime is what makes it a less efficient system. A system like Metro is constantly rolling the buses and people are on, and we'd like to get it to where you're going out to a town and you're taking someone out and you're bringing somebody back, and that's what our commuter system's great. For between here and Moments, we're driving people in and out every day, large volumes of people getting back and forth to work. You can, you know, come back midday if you have a, you know, childcare appointment or something for your family. You can make it back on one of those trips. Those are the really great system needs. It's the demand response is, it's kind of like one vehicle out, one vehicle in, one rider out, one rider in. And so trying to see what efficiencies could be made in that market would be optimal, but I can tell you rural transit just, it's hard to optimize, so.
But we have the data.
Yes.
We have all the point to point. Okay.
Yeah. Hey, Ben, I had a quick one for you. So if you live 3 blocks from my house, you can ride the bus, but if you live in the municipality, you can't use the bus?
So the urban area, urbanized area is what differentiates us between the urban system. We can do one leg of any trip. So we could pick up from outside of the urbanized area and bring you into the urbanized area, or vice versa. We can take you from the non-urbanized area to the non-urbanized area. That's okay. But we cannot do trips wholly within the urbanized area. There are conditions that can be met where, you know, whether it be the current system provider in the urban area cannot provide the trip. There are some caveats to that in the way that what FTA manages this. But yeah, for the most part, if you're in town to in town, that's Metro. If you're out of town to in town, or out of town to out of town, that's us.
Okay, thanks. Anyone else have anything else? Mr. Snipes.
Just a question. Has there been any talk about utilizing the bus, the utilization of buses as warming centers for the homeless during your hours of operation?
I mean, we haven't really had that discussion. I don't know what the logistics of that would be, and I guess is it. I mean, probably a cursory look of if somebody else is doing that to see kind of how that was done. Yeah, I mean, if there was, I mean, conceivably, if you've got a bus sitting that's warm and is going to be sitting there for a couple hours, you know, it seems doable. I don't know what that all would look like.
I was probably looking at can they just, instead of riding to destination, being able to ride just to if for those extreme cold times, that they're able just to get on and get some type of heat without just a destination to destination.
Just riding the bus.
Right, going one way and then coming back another. Or if they do, just take it from one place to a place that's probably warm, certainly not the mall, but whatever places that maybe if they're at
Yeah, I suppose, I mean, I was just trying to think, like, if, yeah, I mean, right now, so due to COVID, we don't have the app, so we're just doing a fareless ride. You could get on the commuter route from here to Moments and just maybe never get off, and just, you know, last bus of the day, hop off, and you could ride. Conceivably, I guess that could happen. I have ridden the metro system to go up. Like if I get my car worked on at a dealership, I'll just hop up here and go up. I mean, conceivably, you could just not hop off. I just don't know if you're in a rural area, you have to call us for the ride. And we would say, okay, where are you going? When do you need to be there? And I will say it's a lot about, you know, I want to be here at this time, and this, you know, it becomes, okay, well, if you have to be there by 10, in order for us to make sense, we have to pick you up by maybe like 9, and they say, okay, I want to be at the store for an hour and a half, and we say, okay, well, we can pick you up kind of in this window. It might not be, it's not cab service, so I don't know how that would work on the rural area where you're like, hey, I just want you to come pick me up and drive me around with you, and then, you know, bring me back.
I was looking at, they said that like the Pembroke has a, I don't call it a nurse center, but they have a senior citizen that's out there, and they allow them as a warming place. So I'm wondering if we can just, if we're able to buy transportation to get them there. KCCSI is also a warming center, so I guess if they can identify or work with those warming centers so that these individuals will have like a ride versus freezing to death in the cold is what I was kind of.
Yeah, I mean, I would certainly say if somebody called our system and said, hey, we have a warming center that's a couple miles from my house, and I prefer not to walk on a one digit degree day. Can I get a ride? And that would be a scenario. Well, we can't do at 8, but we can do it 8:45 or something, and we could drop you off. I mean, I would say that's just a ride within our system, but typically that would be initiated by that user. Now, if the that Pembroke Township example, if the senior facility or it's just a housing, it's an apartment complex, right? It's just for seniors though. If they were to call us and say, hey, we have 3 or 4 people a day that come and don't have rides, but they come here for warming, that would be something we could look into. But I would say if any of those users, if anybody's watching this, wanted to call and said, hey, I need a ride, again, anywhere. You don't have to be a senior. You don't have to have some sort of physical disability. It's just a bus for people to ride. And I mean, we say it a lot. Yeah. This and so yeah, we can take people to places that they want to go, and if they want to go to a warming center, they can call us and ask for a ride.
Oh, that's good. Thanks.
Okay, thanks. Okay, Del, anybody else have any questions for transportation? Okay, thanks, Ben. Okay, Del, do you have anything else?
No, you're up to old business.
Okay, we're gonna go to old business now. I didn't know if you had anything more on planning to go. Okay, under old business, we have anything? Andy wanted us to talk about something on old business, didn't you?
No, it was just the FEMA buyout. It'll be on the next agenda.
Okay, so we'll put it on the next plan. Okay. Anyone else have any old business? Okay, no old business. How about any new business? Anybody have any new business? Okay, no new. Oh, Ms. Peters.
No new business, just move to adjourn if
Okay.
no one has any new business.
Oh,
I had it caught his eye.
okay. Second, Ms. Hudson.
I'll second that.
All in favor? Well, we got Ms. Hudson over here. Yeah. All in favor, say aye.